Welcome back to the Studio Shangri-La podcast. And this is a new year. Happy 2023. Perhaps it's even a new you, a version of you, in a new mind, a way of looking at things. And today's topic is evolution of society, perception, technology, and living forever. Let's start with perception, or way of looking at things. I saw in passing this line that perception is everything. Well, it certainly is most of it. That perception is a powerful tool. And it can be used in beneficial ways, or not so beneficial, even destructive ways. And this reminds me of the quotation from the Christian Bible. On the gate to life being narrow, and the gate to destruction being broad. Or, I like to think of it this way in my modern rendition, that the path to life can be narrow. Now, what does this mean exactly in terms of perception? That it is quite possible to box oneself in with perception into imaginary nightmares, if you will, or limited viewpoints, which in turn affects society, or to box oneself in with destructive behaviors, of which the energies are limited and volatile. And destructive or destructive feeling activities could potentially cause a sort of blindness to the brilliance of life, the everyday beautiful sights and wonders that surround us. And I wondered to myself, does the path to life have to be so narrow? Is this really an idea that has to be a reality? The path of life is the evolution of betterment, of improvement, of development, And this is proven thus far to be a somewhat difficult path to take at times, for one reason or another. Yet, could it be easy to choose life? Could it be startlingly easy to choose and embrace life as the only option and the evolutionary direction forward? And what role has technology in all of this? Well, technology is a reflection of us. It reflects ourselves back to us. And as I'm looking at my iPad, I'm quite literally looking into a mirror of sorts. Made of crystal. Literally. A material which stores information. And so do I have crystalline components. And my eyes and senses interact with the technology. It's an exchange. It's an exchange at the subatomic level. Between humans and our created technology. And what is it that we reflect back to ourselves and then observe about ourselves from that reflection? Computer and digital technologies, I believe, have enhanced our intelligence and self-awareness. There are a lot of meta concepts, if you will, that have been created by this interaction. That perhaps a more metaphysical, psychological, and deep topics are on deck for the ordinary person, so to speak. And not just a select group of, say, philosophers or religious groups or spiritual groups. These topics are now on deck for everyone. How am I interacting with this powerful technology? What do I see about myself? What do I see about others? How do I see? How do I perceive? What do I believe? What do I notice about what I'm creating and attracting? What do I notice about the reality that I'm interacting with? Of course, this is how I am looking at things. Everyone has their avenue of perception, and it's a choice about the conclusions and beliefs that you draw from these perceptions. What do you want to make it? It very well could be that for a time you stumble into a group of thoughts and feelings that don't lead you where you want to go. As I said before, down a seemingly broader path of destruction. That it seems like there are more choices available that lead to that. It just requires a measure of self-control and awareness in realizing how much power that we have. And it can be overwhelming at first. But I, for one, think that the universe has our back. There's really no other way to exist as I see it. That everything has to harmonize to a certain degree for life as we know it to even exist. And flowing with life is a process of figuring out. Towards the cooperative and not the controlling. It can be a mysterious balance, having such strong desires, and also wanting to flow with life towards constructivity, productivity, even, and a feeling of peace and happiness. To be attracted towards peace, and not drama or destruction. So yes, narrow is that gate sometimes, it seems. But perhaps only because it is somewhat different. That the new success is peace. That peace is the assignment. And, well, life is really the success. Life itself. So on a practical level, what does that mean? About conduct. It means energetic awareness. It means deliberate and active perception, which can be a little overwhelming and tiring at first. Now, as I'm saying this, I can claim to awareness of things. And disclaimer, from my perspective, right? And take what you will, how it's useful. But I know that what I want is for the things I say to open doors of possibility, encouragement, and growth. The Shangri-La, the live and let live, those seem like relatively new concepts somehow, and yet not fully put into practice by most. Narrow is the path. It would make sense that destructive activities lead towards degeneration or death. And that the opposite, constructive, well-meaning activities, lead to life. And even just the awareness of these things. That on an evolutionary level, perhaps it's no longer necessary to die because of the awareness of this possible path. Biologically, for a time, it seems that death may have been a choice in order to affect change and further development. However, when life and all the organisms contained therein reaches a certain level of self-awareness, that death, in order to make change, ceases to become necessary. And that it is quite possible to keep evolving in one open-ended lifetime. This is a possibility I can conceive of. And I know that there are others who can conceive of this as well. So, who am I to argue with someone like Einstein, who I believe said something like, if it can be conceived of, it is a possibility. That our development up to this point, alongside the reflections back to us through increasingly advanced technologies, show us what is possible to explore eternity and the wonders of space, and to explore that connected, also eternal inner space. The further you go into science, the further it takes you towards this realization. Because science is the study of life. And what kind of perception does it take to live an open-ended life? Well, that's just believing. And acting accordingly. Not always an easy thing to do. The golden rule, for example. The words sound good. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But what if the life you're used to is actually quite harmful? And you don't necessarily expect to be done good to. Or you don't know how that feels, for example. you actually have to reach beyond the golden rule. You do unto others as the ultimate ideal, not just as they would do unto you, because that might suck actually. So, from the jumping off point of the golden rule, you have to reach into the golden light of possibility. Into the light of kindness. And I'm not saying just be a fool, but the perception, the power of perception, is powerful. And we can shape and mold things to a certain degree. Perhaps instead of the golden rule, do no harm is a good one, or to one's utmost best. Such things as bullying and slander, gossip, violence, self-destructive activities. Those are activities that will lead one astray. By no means am I claiming any kind of perfection over others in saying these things. But when you get to a certain point of realization in life, you feel somewhat compelled to share, as I do now. That energy is very important. Cosmic forces. And being in flow with them and not fighting against them. And at this point, for myself, I choose life and trying to learn to be attracted towards what's peaceful. And to use the law of attraction in a peaceful way. Because if you don't, it can get quite volatile. That's what I've noticed. So a society that evolves beyond the need for death and the death culture, that's a very different society indeed. And one that I would very much like to see and be part of. I suppose that thinking that death is the only way could be considered a kind of ignorance. And perhaps the end of dependence on and blindness because of death can be considered the end of the Kali Yuga that's mentioned in the Vedic texts. The end of this sort of confinement. It could be. I still wholeheartedly believe it's a matter of choice. And on the individual level, we see in the evolutionary paths of different species that different choices have been made. And I've written about this a good deal already, that some species have reached immortality or near immortality. Yes, by choices and interaction with the environment. How are we going to choose and interact going forward? I don't presume to control anyone else's choice or even want to. I speak for myself. Yet I get excited when I talk about these things. And that's why I'm sharing. Because it feels good to talk about these things. It feels good to talk about the possibilities for humanity. And it feels good to talk about the positive things about technology and how this interaction has caused me to look at so many wonderful new perspectives and some difficult ones that lead to realizations. And what's out there in the great beyond? Technology is going to help us. After all, our creations come from us, and we come from creation itself. The great mystery, yet somehow quite familiar. We'll only learn more as we go on. This has been Evolution of Society. Perception, technology, and living forever. A spoken word essay. If you'd like to find out more, please visit the website Shangri-La.maison. Stay tuned for more scientific and very philosophical topics. Happy New Year.